Mikel Arteta says he is not giving up on the Premier League title, but after our 0-0 draw with Nottingham Forest last night, it is borderline impossible for Arsenal to win the Premier League title. In this episode, I am going to look and see, can we find any positives out of that game or any positives looking forward as a third Premier League title in a row passes us by. Let's get into it. Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host, Mark. Today is it's a match review podcast, but not as you know it. We're talking about Arsenal 0, Nottingham Forest 0. We played that on Wednesday night. It is now Thursday afternoon. Usually I dive in and try and do one of these pretty quickly in the morning, get it out for you guys early. But today I decided not to do that because I wanted to do a bit of a different podcast. I want to look at the game, of course, and talk about what went wrong, what we did well, what we didn't do well, but also just generally. Generally, I wanted to look for positives and talk about how I feel right now, which I think maybe is slightly different to some of the anger and frustration that is out there at the moment. And let's contextualise some of this because it's a really, really strange moment for us. Only the second time we have not scored, I should say, the first time we have not scored in back-to-back games since 2023. It's been a very, very long time since we've felt like this, and it's difficult, isn't it? It's really quite difficult. In the last 3 games, we've conceded 1 goal, and we have scored 2. So we've had some difficult watches. Sometimes even if you get hammered, but you get to see some goals, you can almost make peace with it in terms of I've not wasted an hour and a half of my life there. But last night definitely felt like a difficult one to watch. It was a difficult watch from a footballing point of view, and it was a difficult one as a fan. Usually as well, I write lots and lots of notes and structure and stuff going into one of these podcasts. But again, I want to talk a little bit more about how I feel and kind of where we are at right now. And let's start there. Where are we at right now? Well, we're in a place that we didn't want to be in. We have basically nothing to fight for, with many months left of the season. I think we've got 2 and a bit months left now. It's very unlikely that we win the Champions League. Let's start there. It's very, very unlikely we win the Champions League playing how we are. We need to get through PSV, which I think we still should be good enough to do, and we absolutely have to do to kind of make sure that the mood around the club doesn't become really, really sour. But then we also have to beat Real Madrid, and then probably, if we beat Real Madrid, Liverpool, and then probably one of Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And with the players we've got available, I mean, even with a full-strength team, that is a really tall order. And to have the cluster of injuries that we've got and the mood around the club that we've got, I think it is a borderline impossible task. It's also a borderline impossible task for us to win the Premier League. Since we drew 0-0 and Liverpool beat Newcastle 2-0 at Anfield, there is 13 points between the 2 teams. Now, yes, we've got a game in hand, but there's no way we are pulling in even a 10-point deficit. No way. Not with the way Liverpool are playing, not with the way we're playing. So, really, I think this is my message to everyone, is we need to start taking this a game at a time and enjoy or critique in one game at a time kind of ways, because otherwise it's going to be a real slog to the end of the year, and one that, we're not going to enjoy supporting our team for if we kind of try and hang on to this idea of, well, maybe Liverpool can go on a 5-game losing run and we can find a way to score a goal and stuff like that. Maybe that will happen. I think that's a real far out possibility, and we need to kind of just temper our expectations, and maybe we just take this one game at a time. I think that's how I'm looking to do it. It's certainly how I experienced the Nottingham Forest game last night, and really, rather than kind of looking at it as the start of a series of tough games, which is, if we'd beaten West Ham and the Liverpool results had gone a different way, I probably would have looked at it as, okay, this is the first one we have to get out of the way, and then we're on a run of tricky games, and that will kind of define our season. Now I'm just looking at it as, this is a game against Nottingham Forest. They're a good team this year. Let's take it as it is and see how it goes. And I think if you address this game in isolation, a 0-0, a draw, away as well, the team in third when you're in second, it's not disastrous, is it? It's not disastrous in any way, shape or form. If we were very tight to Liverpool and we'd gone away to Manchester City, in that example, and we'd got a 0-0 draw and, Liverpool had just slipped up to Aston Villa, we'd probably be looking at it and go, cool, everyone's even then. We've navigated a tough fixture. You've still got two more difficult ones to come, but that's not the scenario we're in. But, second versus third, it's a strong opponent we were playing, and to analyse it in that way, I think makes it a little bit easier. One way that people have been kind of looking at it is it's another game without a goal, and it's another game where we looked more like scoring a goal against Forest than we did against West Ham, but in the cold hard light of day this afternoon, when I'm kind of thinking about it, did we have any really massive chances? I mean, we had the Calafiori one, which hit the post, and we had the Ethan Nwaneri one where he took a touch, but he should have shot a little bit earlier, and that was blocked by Murillo, I believe. So that was it, and in the Premier League, especially when you're going up against a goalkeeper as good as Matt Sells, I don't think you can create two chances and expect to win a game, especially not a game, between two teams that are gunning for Champions League places. It's not going to happen. Fair play to Nottingham Forest. I thought they played pretty well and offered good amount of threat on the counter. I do want to say this, if I'm analysing it in terms of an individual game and kind of on the merits of this game, we managed transitions really, really well. I was worried. You will have heard me in the preview pod kind of talk about the pace, talk about how I think they can get through us if they do what they normally do and sit back and then spring with Gibbs-White and Alanga and Awonyi and all of these players that they've got. Hudson-Odoi, he was threatening Calafiori very early on. And I thought we did a good job managing that. I really did. Declan Rice was clearly on a mission to make up for the West Ham performance, and there's been some discussion since around, well, was that Arteta kind of putting his stamp on Declan Rice with, you were at fault for the goal, same for Calafiori, you were at fault for the goal, so I'm going to pull you both off nice and early and make my point. Was it an emotional substitution made by Mikel Arteta? I'm not sure I believe that, but if it was that, it certainly worked. It certainly worked because Declan Rice kind of showed up with a bee in his bonnet last night. His performance meant that we were managing transitions a lot better, and I think the two players behind him in Gabriel and Saliba were superb. They took on so much individual responsibility. And we've spoken a couple of times about, how can we try something new? I've certainly spoken about my desire for us to go to a classic 4-2-3-1, the kind of, Erdegaard in a 10 formation rather than making him be an 8. That isn't what we did. But in terms of what we did differently is Gabriel and Saliba were so aggressive. So aggressive. There were multiple times where Saliba was in supporting right wing and Gabriel the same on the left. And I thought, it's not how I do it, but I can see that those three players, especially Rice, Gabriel and Saliba, were taking massive personal responsibility on going, look, in front of us isn't what we want. It's not what anyone wants. And these guys, especially Marino and Nwaneri, I think it's different scenario for Trossard, but Marino and Nwaneri are being drafted in, 17-year-old and a guy playing really far out of position who's had a difficult first season. We're gonna step up for these guys and we're gonna try and make something happen. And they were really taking a lot of responsibility last night. It didn't come to anything. Sure, it didn't come to anything in the end, but I liked last night that we were a bit braver and we tried different things, and you could see that the players were desperate to score that goal. They were desperate to make up for the West Ham performance, and I think certainly in my mind they did a little bit. They absolutely did. Just not because they went and won the game, because they obviously didn't, not because they put on a clinic, but because even though it's in a really difficult scenario for them at the moment, I could see that they were trying. Now, was the quality there? Nowhere near. Nowhere near. I didn't think we had anything really. I've already spoken, we didn't create many chances. There was one really good corner from Rice, but I think the rest were dealt with fairly comfortably. That one ended up in a good header from Marino, which went straight at Sells. But not too much quality from him. I thought Erdegaard, again, he huffed and he puffed, but he couldn't blow the house down kind of thing. It's a similar story to kind of my general feelings about the game with Erdegaard is, look, I think you've played a lot better in your general play, but you just don't have anything around you or in front of you to play with. And that's tough. It's hard. It's hard for those guys, and I think it's really important we remember that. So, yeah, I thought Rice, Saliba, and Gabriel did an okay job. Again, watching this game in isolation, and I'm going to talk about Ricardo Calafiori. I thought he was interesting from an attacking point of view, but worrying from a defensive point of view. When pacey wingers get at him, there is a very, very obvious game plan, which is knock the ball past him and try and go around him. He got booked super early, didn't he? And then Callum Hudson-Odoi had him on toast for about 15 to 20 minutes. I think Trossard recognised it well and came in to support him a number of times. But Calafiori kind of worried me a little bit. He obviously got pulled at half-time for Kieran Tierney, who again, I thought did a good job, but just disappointing that that's where we're turning to at this point. So, in terms of the kind of overall structure of the game, did I really believe that at the end we were going to get a goal? I don't think I did. Obviously, like I've used the phrase already, we huffed and we puffed, and there was lots and lots of effort and lots of, I think, bravery, I'm going to say, to try and make something happen. You know, even Ethan Nwaneri, 17-year-old kid, drifting out of position, going out to the left wing rather than the right wing, trying to make something happen over on that side. Trossard was busy. I thought Marino was basically disconnected from the rest of the team, but I could see him doing some different things. You know, against West Ham, he was very, very isolated up front. This time, I could see him trying to undo that. You know, he went round the outside, he went wide to kind of pick up like positions like Kai Havertz picks up. Kai Havertz loves the roll out to the right wing to support Bukayo Saka. In this scenario, Marino did it a couple of times for Nwaneri and a couple of times for Trossard, just rolling out to the wing. But ultimately, I don't think his timing was right. I don't think he really affected the play when he did that. And quite often, he was just ignored because actually, if you put Kai Havertz in that scenario, he's probably beating his man, he's putting a great cross in, something like that. Unfortunately, with Marino, I don't think his teammates really trusted him out in those wide spots. So Trossard wasn't giving him the ball when he went and did it. Nwaneri wasn't giving him the ball when he went and did it, which meant he didn't have any impact. So it's one of those where he huffed and he puffed and he tried, but it wasn't effective. It wasn't joined up. It wasn't well thought out, you know, and I think that's the shame for me. Look, I started this by talking about let's try and find some positives in this, and I think I've kind of rolled into what went wrong. What went right is what I'm talking about as well, in terms of, you know, there was a bravery and an honest intention from Arsenal players, I think, to go out and try and make something different happen. They didn't make it happen, but they managed transitions really, really well. Now, look, if we lose this game, and let's not get this wrong, there was a couple of chances for Nottingham Forest, and they are a very good team with some very, very good players. Raya had to make a big save against Wood. They have quality. So if we'd lost this game, which is perfectly reasonable to think about, this could have tasted very, very different, couldn't it? And it would be a bit more of a bloodbath this morning, I think, just because that's how football fans react. So I think it's positive that we kept a clean sheet. You know, it's our second in 3 games in terms of clean sheets. And the defence absolutely did their bit of the bargain, and probably a little bit more with the amount of effort that they put in. Jurriën Timber was really, really busy. Calafiori, for as many times as he got skinned early doors, I did see him, you know, running into that centre-forward position, basically, alongside Marino, to try and create carnage and try and affect the Nottingham Forest back line. I think he did that a little bit, but not with any significance. And that's sort of where I'm at with this game. It was positive that we'd shown bravery and we'd shown a response. And actually, I posted on Blue Sky, that performance beats West Ham. 100%. And that's not to be disrespectful to West Ham, but I just don't think that they would have had the kind of resilience to cope with it. What we showed against West Ham was a really poor outing. and West Ham played very, very well and did their job and got their 3 points. And I'm really not trying to be disrespectful. I doubt there's any West Ham fans listening, but I do think that the performance we put in against Nottingham Forest beats West Ham. However, flip that. If we'd put in the performance we put in against West Ham, against Nottingham Forest, we get destroyed. I'm telling you that. So that's a positive. We've improved. We've been brave. We've kind of responded a little bit to the West Ham defeat. But ultimately, it's same old, same old. I'm not going to rehash, signings and stuff like that. I'm not going to rehash the fact that we've got injuries. We've done that a number of times. What I'm going to do is, now that I've sort of got that off my chest and what I think was positive about last night and what I think was negative about last night, I'm going to take a short break and I'm going to kind of answer some questions in the second half to give it a bit more of a structure and kind of talk through some of the problems that we have seen and faced over the last couple of weeks. Hello everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you're like me, you finished watching an Arsenal game and you're already looking for the next bit of Arsenal coverage you can find. If that sounds like you, follow or subscribe to Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast app of choice right now to make sure you don't miss a single episode from me. I'm here 3 times a week, reviewing matches and covering Arsenal news, and I'm so excited to have you all here as well. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome back. So, thank you very much for listening to my, not quite a rant, but the first half I kind of did it by the seat of my pants a little bit, because the reason I wanted to do it like that was because I just feel that I can pull up loads of stats. I can pull up the fact that we created less than 1 XG and had X number of shots, and and the fact that we had this much possession against Forest, and but we've got these injuries. But I just feel like we've done it. I feel like it's been done a number of times, and I just wanted to talk kind of a little bit more off the cuff and talk about how I felt watching the game. And to sum the first half up, I felt like we tried a lot more. We saw some more personal responsibility from the players, but ultimately I think we didn't have the options up front, and that's going to be a struggle for the end of the year. What are the positives, though, that we can take towards the end of the year? I think I spoke about this last week. I think we have to use this as an opportunity to try some different things. Certainly, especially as we get closer and closer to the idea of, okay, top 2 secured. I mean, fun fact, we are now safe from relegation for another season. So next year will be our 100th in the top flight. So I guess that's an achievement of a kind. We have to take this opportunity to try some different things. One thing I really want to try is Martin Odegaard at 10. But is there a world where we're also looking at Ethan Nwaneri at 9? We're looking at Martinelli off the right a little bit more once he's back. Are we looking at how can we get Odegaard, Saka and Nwaneri in the same team? Are we experimenting with these things? Because we have to find something to do with the rest of this season. And I really don't think we can go out with a whimper. We must come second. That is an absolute, I don't know, what's the word? Minimum requirement is we must come second. I think we must go through against PSV. Must go through against them. As long as we do those 2 things, I'm okay with whatever this year brings. I hope we don't have to give Liverpool a guard of honour, but let's be frank, they have deserved it. And however you look at their season, whether you think, God, they've had some lucky goals or they've had some, real great injury luck, those things can be true. But also what is true is they are an exceptional team with a truly, truly exceptional superstar at the front of their pitch. So, I don't think you can begrudge them. And as annoyed and frustrated as we've been chasing Manchester City over the past 2 seasons and not quite getting there, and this feeling of injustice that they've kind of brought these titles and stuff like that, and maybe not fairly, I think is probably the most important way of putting that, because everyone buys a title eventually. Liverpool have had that in tenfold as well, so we have to respect the fact that they have gone and won this title as well as us having a disappointing season. They have gone and won this title. I don't want us to give them a guard of honour. So let's hope that we don't have to do that, and we make sure that we find a way to avoid that, however that that falls. But yeah, come second, beat PSV. Let's go into and have a night against Real Madrid. Who knows? Who knows? We might. I say Real Madrid. It could also be Atletico Madrid. Of course, it can. Not being disrespectful to them, but I think Real Madrid are a really good side, and I think they're likely to go through, and likely who we'll face. Let's get Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli back for that and have a go. There is nothing wrong with if we go out to Real Madrid, but we've won a tie and going, maybe it's the home leg, we win the home leg, and going, you know what, that was a highlight. Just like the Man City 5-1 will be a highlight for us. And I think that's it. That's how we have to enjoy it. Find a game, find games, find results, enjoy those results for what they are. They're not going to win us the league. Then those results are not going to win us the Champions League. But we can still enjoy those things. And I think Arteta, like I say, has to use it as an opportunity to try new things. Let's address one of the big ones that's been going around since the West Ham game, but after the Forest game as well, with this basically wrapping it up for Liverpool and putting a pretty pink bow on it. It's ready for them. They're probably etching the name on already and getting the L in on the Premier League trophy. Can Mikel Arteta win us a Premier League trophy? This will be our third time. I'm going to put it in brackets because this year's been difficult, but third title challenging season. And we have no Premier League titles for that. Can Mikel do it? Well, I would offer you this as a point of view of this. The first Premier League title race we had, we were not expected to be there. That was a shock one, a surprise. And we were all kind of looking at the season going, if we come fourth, that would be absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. We arrived really, really early in that season, put together scintillating early form. It was the year of the pink kit and Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko and all of that. And we thought, wow, what a team this is. And we fell away at the end because we lost Saliba and Tomiyasu in the same Europa League game. And that was obviously frustrating and sad. But we weren't ever really supposed to be there. Last season, everyone thought, okay, Arsenal are going to come through here and deliver something. And boy, did we deliver. 89 points, the second most points Arsenal have ever had in the Premier League. And we put together a run that was basically 103 point pace from February to the end of the season. 103 point pace. Incredible. And I just want to make the point that a lot of these players that we've said all year, they're not good enough anymore. These were the players that were doing that 103 point pace. Kai Havertz is one that always springs to mind, and I don't want this to become another Kai Havertz show because I love him and I talk about him all the time. But he was part of that team, and this group is mainly that group. It's pretty similar. We haven't changed too much. We've obviously lost players like Fabio Vieira and Emil Smith-Rowe, but by the end of that season, how much were they playing anyway? The problem with that is we met a Manchester City team who got on 103 point pace as well, but like a game earlier. And that is basically it. I've heard it described as if Phil Foden doesn't score, a number of those absolute rockets that he scored, we win the league. We're league champions. So, and then this year, you can call it a title challenge. You might not call it a title challenge. Seeming we're talking about Liverpool winning it with 10 games left. I don't think anyone launches a title challenge, let alone comes second, with the injuries and the difficulties we've had this year, the schedule the way it's been, the injuries the way they've been clustered together, the refereeing decisions we've had. I don't think anyone does that. I really don't. And that's not being arrogant. I just think, there's probably only two teams that can cope with that. It's Arsenal and Liverpool, and one of those teams it happened to, and one of them it didn't. And the Liverpool took advantage of that, absolutely. If it had been the other way around, I would expect us to take advantage of that. And I think Liverpool fans would have a real argument to say, well, we don't have our four best attackers and we've had shit luck with referees and stuff like that. Of course, I get it. I absolutely get that. So can Mikel Arteta win us a title? Yeah, I think he can. We were never expected to be in the first one. We took on an absolute juggernaut in the second one. And we have taken such bad luck in the third one. It actually, it took Jurgen Klopp a number of years to get his first title, and he started in probably a slightly better position than Arteta did. Slot is obviously going to get it on the first attempt, but he's picked up the reins of a really good team. Guardiola was second attempt, again, picked up the reins of a really good team. So, yeah, we can compare it to these guys, but I don't think that's quite the same. I don't think it's quite right. The context really matters. And I'm not sat here, having watched us not score in 2 of our last 3 Premier League games and not be able to come up with a solution against Nottingham Forest. And just, I've sat in the first half, I've spoken about, oh, yeah, it's good that we were brave, right? It's good that we took some personal responsibility, but we didn't do anything. We didn't score. It's wild for me to say all of that and then also be able to say, but I think Mikel Arteta is still the man. I do. And I really come back to this as my main focus of is there a scenario where we have really, really bottled it? I don't think we were ever expected in the first one. I don't think we were ever expected to be there, and that's the one you could argue we bottled it the most, and we let it go and let it get away from us. The second one, we were just up against a behemoth, and this year, there's no way you could argue that we've bottled it. We've not been first at any point. I don't know if we are going to have. I don't know if we have had a scenario where we're like, Mikel Arteta had to win that league. He had to. I don't know if we've had a single one. Because the first one, it was his first run. The second one, he came up and against an absolute juggernaut of a team. And of course, this one, we just don't have the players. They're just all injured. So, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? I am hopeful for next season. I think if we can use these last few weeks to try something different, we might develop something in readiness for next season. I'm going to leave it there. That was a very different match review because, like I said, I didn't do many notes. I wanted to just talk from the heart and kind of address some of the things I've seen going around online and recognise some of the improvements that I saw. But ultimately, we are going to have to slog 3 games for a little while, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough as a podcaster, I'll tell you that. It's going to be a difficult period when we're looking at these games and we have so little in the final third, not because of the fault of any of those players, but just because we just don't have the options, and the options we do have are going to get tired very, very quickly doing 90 minutes. So, this is going to be a slog, and I just wanted to speak a little bit more off the cuff and recognise that there was a little bit more of an attempt from Arsenal. There was players out there taking responsibility, trying to drive us forward, trying to do something different, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that they've done that. I know it's not good enough. I know we're not, we have to be in a position where we are winning games no matter what, and we are winning trophies no matter what. But right now, I don't feel that angry about it. I feel kind of deflated about it, but I don't feel that angry about it because of all the context that we've spoken about for many, many weeks. I'll leave you with this. I really, really do think Mikel Arteta is the right man for us. I really, really do think that this group is 1 or 2 players away from being truly world class. And I think players like Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice, William Saliba, Gabriel, the one thing that they will never do is have a tantrum, sulk when things aren't going their way. They have that will to win. They keep trying, they keep going. And this period would be a lot more painful if we had prima donnas in our team, if we still had someone like Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for all the quality he had. It could be a difficult period if we had him leading us rather than Martin Odegaard right now. And I'm thankful that for all the negativity around the club and all the things that have gone wrong, we still have players that can put in a horror performance against West Ham and turn up against Nottingham Forest and not fix it. That's not what I'm saying. They didn't fix it last night. They didn't perform well last night, but actually step up and go, you know what? We are not letting this get away from us. We are not letting this spiral. We're going to try something different. We're going to take the responsibility for it. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for following. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for putting up with a slightly different format today because I've enjoyed it. And it's fun to do ones that are a little bit more off the cuff, even though I'm sure for the listeners it's slightly harder to follow where my brain's going. Yeah, thank you for following. Thank you for listening. I'll speak to you very, very soon.